Alright, what up everybody? It's your boy Akeem from the Football Source, here to give you a recap of Week 8 of the 2014 college football season. Now I'm going to start things off with the upset game of the week. West Virginia beat a good ranked Baylor team, pummeling them 41-27. Now on the offensive side for Baylor, they just were not sharp enough in this matchup, and defensively a lot of miscues, and due to the fact that they had a lot of missed coverages in this matchup, and Clint Trickett just pretty much picked on that defense, passing over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And his leading target, Kevin White, he had a great performance, 132 yards receiving in this matchup. And I think he can become a great candidate for the Biletnikoff Award, given it to the nation's top receiver come towards the end of the season. He is leading the nation in receiving yards this season, and he's bringing up a great case. I think the race is between him and Amari Cooper for Alabama for this particular honor. Next game, Utah escaped a 29-23 overtime victory over Oregon State. Utah is still ranked in the top 20 in the nation so far this season, and it's because of running back Devontae Booker, who had 229 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, including that winning score in overtime, boosting the Utes a good victory over the Beavers. My upset game of the week, number 14 Kansas State over number 11 Oklahoma, 31-30. Now in this matchup, Oklahoma just did look decent on the offensive side, but they messed up a lot defensively, giving up a couple of big plays, including a 60-plus yard touchdown reception by Glenn Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski's younger brother for Kansas State, big score in that, and particularly in the special teams unit. Oklahoma very disappointed in special teams, and their kicker missing the extra point, tying the game to help tie the game 31-31, but he ended up missing an extra point, then missing a 19-yard field goal, and those were the big difference makers in this matchup, pulling off a good surprising upset over OU at Norman. Next game, Iowa ended up losing to Maryland 31-38. Maryland had a great game, overcoming a 14-0 deficit earlier in the game, and then the Stephon Diggs in the offense for Maryland, they ended up pulling off a great victory, coming back. And speaking of Diggs, 9 receptions, 130 yards, and a touchdown in this matchup. Now, this game particularly for Alabama and Texas A&M. Alabama humiliated and embarrassed Kevin Sumlin, winning 59-0. This is Kevin Sumlin's first goose egg, first shutout loss in his head coaching history. This was a big surprise for me. Now, Alabama just flat out dominated in this matchup, and I still think they could have a chance of making it to the playoff at the end of the season. They are my pick to represent the SEC division, at least possibly as an at-large, but we still have a lot of season left. UCLA had a good shootout between them and the California Bears. They ended up winning 36-34. This was a good matchup, and I had picked UCLA in this game. Next game, number 13 Ohio State crushed Rutgers, who was actually 5-1 entering that matchup on Saturday, beating them 56-17. Another close game, Clemson escaped against Boston at Boston, winning 17-13. Offense needs to do a lot better, but they still have their hopes still alive to represent the Atlantic Division of the ACC Conference. They still need Florida State to have 2 losses in conference play even for them to have a chance of making it to the ACC Championship. Highly doubt that will happen. TCU embarrassed number 15 Oklahoma State 42-9. TCU still have their hopes high and to make it to the playoff at the end of the season. And with Minnesota still winning and only 1 loss, and Minnesota losing to TCU, TCU still has their chances of making it to the playoff at the end of the season. Missouri ended up bouncing back for a shutout loss last week, 34-0 to Georgia, beating Florida 42-13. And I believe that head coach Will Muschamp of the Gators, he will be fired come towards the end of the season. What another embarrassing loss. Kentucky entering only 1 loss, entering at Baton Rouge this past Saturday, getting crushed by Louisiana State 41-3. Next game, Georgia, I mentioned earlier, crushing Missouri last week. They ended up having another good game over Arkansas, led by running back Nick Chubb, who was an excellent replacement for Ty Gurley. 30 carries for 202 yards in that matchup and a couple of scores. Oregon hosted Washington. This was an upset alert for you guys, but Washington ended up losing 45-20. Oregon still has their hopes and is still on set of making it to the college football playoff at the end of the season. They're looking to win that Pac-12 championship and remaining undefeated and winning out for the remainder of the season with just that one loss. And this was a surprising win this past week. Stanford losing to Arizona State. Arizona State had a good victory, 26-10. That was a big surprise for me. I thought that Stanford's defense was going to pummel Arizona State, but Arizona State was at home. Jalen Strong had a great game, and he could possibly make it to my top 2 receivers for the 2015 NFL Draft. Week after week, he has been raising his draft status, and I think he could become a good, excellent receiver at the next level. But this was a great victory for Arizona State. Stanford is definitely out of the race. This is their 3rd loss of the season. And last and not least, the game of the week, number 2, Florida State hosting number 5, Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame, I believe that they had a great game. Florida State pulled off an excellent escape in this one. And Florida State, this was a big scare for them because I thought they was going to win by at least 14 points in this matchup. But Notre Dame showed a lot of heart. And the reason why they lost this matchup, it all came down to the final play at the end of the game. The pass interference, the offensive pass interference for Notre Dame. That was the reason why they lost that game. Had that pass interference not occurred, Notre Dame would have pulled off a good victory. Florida State ended up winning 31-27. Sorry about not giving you guys the score. But going back to Notre Dame, Everson Golston, you got to give this kid credit. He had showed a lot of heart in this matchup, passing for over 300 yards, two interceptions, yes, but he did pass for 3 touchdowns. And the difference, there was a difference in turnovers, 2 turnovers for Notre Dame to only 1 for Florida State. And I told you guys that was one of my keys of the victory for Notre Dame. They had to cut back the turnovers, but the turnovers to me weren't that big of a deal. It was really that offensive pass interference at the end of the game. And to be honest with you guys, the guy didn't even have to touch the Florida State secondary. They could have just let them go complete, and they still would have scored and pulled off a great upset on the road. But I still think that because of this loss and because how close it was, Notre Dame still has a fighting chance of making it to the playoff at the end of the season. And me personally, even though they're not ranked in the top 5, I believe that they win out for the remainder of the season. I believe that the committee for the playoff this season, I honestly believe that Notre Dame should get the nod to make it to the top 4 come towards the end of the season. They're doing a great job with a tough schedule, and they had a great game against Florida State. I still think they have a fighting chance of making it to the playoff. Now for Florida State, they still remain undefeated, led by quarterback Jameis Winston, who is still undefeated in play in college football. But going back to this game, I have to give kudos to Notre Dame. They had a great game. Corey Robinson, 99 yards receiving, a couple of scores, and he's actually David Robinson's son, and he had 8 receptions in that matchup. Corey Robinson had a great game. Now going for Florida State, they had a couple of miscues on the defensive side as far as their coverage tactics against Corey Robinson and that Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They had a couple of blown coverages in that matchup. They're going to have to improve in order to remain undefeated, and I think that teams are going to pickpocket that defense. They just need to crisp things up with the defense and try to tweak things a little bit to make their adjustments and doing a better job in coverage. And for Florida State, they had a great pass rushing attack. They pretty much mauled Everson Golston, but Everson Golston, just like I said, he showed a lot of heart and he had a great game. This is not a game they should be disappointed. Notre Dame should have won this matchup. They just had that mental error at the end of the game. Now, going towards the end of this week, we have actually 4 SEC West Division teams in the top 5. Going at number 1, Mississippi State still ranked top in the nation. Number 2, Florida State stays at number 2. Number 3 is Ole Miss. Number 4 is Alabama, and at number 5 is Auburn. Now, I don't think that 2 teams of the SEC division will make it to the playoff at the end of the season, but the way things is looking, this might actually happen. I don't think this is really fair, but I still think that I'm still going to stick with different teams. I don't see 2 teams from the West SEC division making it to the playoff at the end of the season. I honestly believe that we should see some conference champions and represent these top 4 seeds, and possibly Notre Dame if they remain undefeated. And I still have some hopes for them. They showed a lot of heart in that matchup. I'm sorry to say that. I've been repeating myself about them. Notre Dame played a great game. I think they should have won that game. Just one hiccup at the end of the match. Now, next time I'm going to catch you guys will actually be on Thursday to give you a preview of Week 9 of this season. Thank you for watching today's vlog. From the Football Source, I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.